Learn English through Stories B37 PDF. Adapted and modified by Kulwant Singh Sandhu. Contents 1. Mini Stories 3. 2. Picture Dictionary page. 1. Mini Stories 3. By Ella Hill. Story 21. One day a big ship hit a smaller ship while they were both going from England to America. The smaller ship was badly damaged and had to be taken back to England, where a judge had to decide who was to blame for the accident. Several of the people who had seen the big ship hit the smaller one said that, a few seconds before the accident, the big ship had sent a signal to the smaller one. The judge was puzzled by this, so he said, "Who sent this signal?" A young signalman came forward and said, "I did, sir." "Oh?" said the judge. "And what signal did you send to the other ship?" The young signalman's face went red as he answered, "Good luck on your voyage." Story 22. Mr. Jones was very fond of climbing mountains, so one year he went to Switzerland for his holidays. After he had climbed some easy mountains, he decided one day to climb a more difficult one, but he did not want to go up it alone, so he found a good Swiss guide who had often climbed that mountain. At first it was not a difficult climb, but then they came to a place which was not so easy. The guide stopped, turned round and warned Mr. Jones. "Be careful here," he said. "This is a dangerous place, you can easily fall, and if you do, you will fall straight down a very long way. But," he continued calmly, "if you do fall here, don't forget to look to the right while you are going down. There is a quite extraordinarily beautiful view there, much more beautiful than the one you can see from here." Story 23. A young father was visiting an older neighbor. They were standing in the older man's garden and talking about children. The young man said, "How strict should parents be with their children?" The older man pointed to a string between a big strong tree and a thin young one. "Please untie that string," he said. The young man untied it, and the young tree bent over to one side. "Now tie it again, please," said the older man. "But first pull the string tight so that the young tree is straight again." The young man did this. Then the older man said, "There, it is the same with children, you must be strict with them, but sometimes you must untie the string to see how they are getting on. If they are not yet able to stand alone, you must tie the string tight again, but when you find that they are ready to stand alone, you can take the string away." Story 24. Mrs. Smith was looking out of her window when she saw a truck and a big car hit each other. She ran out to help. There was only one man in the truck and one woman in the car, and neither of them was hurt, but the car was damaged. The lady looked very white and her hands were shaking, so Mrs. Smith invited her into her house and gave her some tea. She was a pleasant woman of about 50 years old. She drank the tea and soon looked much better. Then she said to Mrs. Smith, "Have you got a telephone, please? I would like to telephone my husband. We have a kind of custom. Whenever I have an accident with the car, I telephone him." Story 25. The zoo had big baskets for rubbish, where people who bought ice creams and other things could throw the papers from them. One Saturday afternoon, Mr. Brown was walking near the cages where the lions and tigers were kept. Usually there were a lot of people round these cages on a Saturday afternoon, but that day there was nobody there. Mr. Brown was surprised. But he was even more surprised when he saw a crowd around the rubbish basket near the lion's cage. He went towards the crowd. Most of them were children. He looked over their heads and saw a little mouse which was running about among the pieces of paper in the basket and looking for bits of food. It was only a few centimeters from the children, but it was not afraid, and the children were more interested in this small common mouse than in the lions and tigers. Story 26. One day a lady saw a mouse running across her kitchen floor. She was very afraid of mice, so she ran out of the house, got in a bus and went down to the shops. There, she bought a mousetrap. The shopkeeper said to her, "Put some cheese in it and you will soon catch that mouse." The lady went home with her mousetrap, but when she looked in her cupboard, she could not find any cheese in it. She did not want to go back to the shops because it was very late, so she cut a picture of some cheese out of a magazine and put that in the trap. Surprisingly, the picture of the cheese was quite successful. When the lady came down to the kitchen the next morning, there was a picture of a mouse in the trap beside the picture of the cheese. Story 27. When Nasruddin's first wife died, he married again. His second wife was much younger than he was, and they often quarreled. One evening when Nasruddin came home very late, his wife said to him, "I cooked your dinner 2 hours ago, it is quite spoiled now." She was so angry that she gave him a push, and as she was strong and he was old and weak, he fell down the stairs. One of Nasruddin's neighbors, who was always eager to know what was happening in everybody else's house, was listening, and when she heard the noise that Nasruddin made when he fell down the stairs, she came to his front door and knocked. "What has happened?" she said. "My coat fell down the stairs," he answered. "But a coat would not make so much noise," the neighbor said. "Of course it would," answered Nasruddin, "if I was inside it." Story 28. One of Nasruddin's rich neighbors gave a big party one evening, but he forgot to invite him. Nasruddin waited and waited, but no invitation came, so at last, when the party had already begun, he took a piece of paper, folded it, put it in an envelope and took it to his neighbor's house. "I have a very important letter for the host," he said to the servants at the door. The servants took him into the big room where everybody was eating. Nasruddin gave the letter to his rich neighbor, and at once sat down and began to fill his mouth with food. The host looked at the envelope, but there was nothing on it, so he said, "Are you sure that this letter is for me? There is no address on it." "Oh yes," said Nasruddin, "and there is no writing inside it either, because it was prepared in a hurry." Story 29. One evening there was a big dance at the hotel in our town. One of the guests at the dance was a man of about 40, who thought he was so handsome that every girl who saw him would fall in love with him. At the beginning of one of the dances, he saw a pretty young woman who was standing beside an older lady at the edge of the dance floor. He went up to the girl and asked her to dance. She had seen him dancing before, so she knew that he was a good dancer, and as she too liked dancing, she accepted. After they had danced several dances together, the man led her into the garden and said, "Do you tell your mother everything that you do?" "Of course not," she answered sweetly. "She does not mind what I do now, but my husband always wants to know." Story 30. John liked to wear his hair very long. Some of his friends thought that it looked like a girl's hair, but they never made jokes about it, because John was a big, strong young man, and he did not think jokes about his hair funny. John always went to the barber's twice a month to have his hair cut and washed, and one day the barber said to him, "Now why don't you let me cut most of this hair off and make your head tidy? Nobody would recognize you if I did that, I am sure." John said nothing for a few seconds, and then he said, "Perhaps you are right, but I am sure that nobody would recognize you either if you did that to my hair." 2. Picture Dictionary.